Alright, what's up, Dragon Brood? Y'all seem to have liked this so much last time with Bloom Burrow that we're going to do it again, and we're going to talk about 10 cards that overperformed based on the streamer event and the early pre-releases and everything else that y'all should consider crafting, and then we'll have a companion video for things you probably shouldn't be crafting as well. So, let's get into it. Actually, before we get into it, I want to show y'all something. We just got these sweet shirt designs put into the merch store, so there's a link down below. You should check it out. Support your boy. This is a great throwback shirt for Magic players, but also just a really cool message that I want to have out there. So check that out if you have a chance. But yeah, hope you support me, but otherwise, let's get into these cards to help y'all out. Right, so the first one is Kona Rescue Beasty. We all thought this might be playable, but it actually turned out to be better than we considered for a lot of reasons, right? There's things that let you just tap for mana. There's things that let you saddle. There's vehicles that we're actually going to talk about another one here in a second. Like, there's all kinds of things you could tap this to and get value out of. In worst case scenario, even if you don't have anything to put into play or you don't have a way to tap it, like, you can always just attack with a 4-power creature and it's still a thing your opponent has to deal with because they don't want to risk you having something bigger. So yeah, it is 3 toughness, which makes it susceptible to a lot of things. A lot of things can kill it. But honestly, we saw this card do a lot of work in a lot of different scenarios. And even when it didn't, it caused a lot of questions for the opponent. Like, sitting across from this card is tough. Like, you have to decide where to dedicate your blocks or not because of the potential of what could come behind it. So yeah, this card is actually pretty good and playable, so if you've been thinking about it, you'll probably be fine crafting a couple copies of this one. Oh, and also if you haven't seen it, I'm going to try to remember to link a video here that y'all should watch after this one that actually shows you a bunch of old cards that got better because of stuff from Duskmourn. So we'll just put that out there for you. But our next card, Unidentified Hovership. This one's actually pretty damn good. Like, the thing to think about on this card is that we thought it was going to be good. It was just a matter of, like, is it as good or better than we anticipated? I think the answer is yes. Because we've had this version of a card before where it's basically a creature, exile a thing, when that thing dies, you get the card back. Well, here, you get the upside of not even having to give the threat back, right? You give them a random card of their top 2. And oftentimes, it's not going to be as good as what you got rid of. But this also gives you another way to tap some things if you want to play survivors. It's also a flyer, so in those weird combat situations where you can't get anything in, you can come over the top with this. Like, there's a lot going for this, really. And it does have the option that you can just exile a thing. It doesn't have to be something your opponents control, because usually cards like this only let you exile things from your opponent. This just says when it enters, exile up to 1 target creature with toughness 5 or less. So if there is some reason you want to get rid of your own thing and maybe manifest dread, there's an option for that too. But yeah, this card turned out to be very good, very playable. I'm not going to be surprised if we see a lot of these popping up in competitive matches. Alright, I have Overlord of the Boiler Bilges up, but honestly, I'm going to say all of the Overlords. I mean, the blue is probably like the weakest one, but it is still very playable because you just get extra cards, right? That's not the worst thing. And it flies, which helps a lot as a 5-power creature. So yeah, this one's really good because it deals 4 both when you impend it, when it first comes into play, and then when you attack. That alone can clear creatures out of the way and let you just get attacks in. The black one obviously fuels a lot of stuff if you're playing Delirium or anything like that. The white one we saw is good with other enchantment stacks and things that make tokens. If you ever need extra creatures or flyers, it's a great reanimation target. Like, all of these are good. Even the green one we've seen, especially for domain decks and whatnot, just making extra lands that can produce the different mana that you want, right? They all do a ton of stuff. Like, honestly, I would argue that this is probably the best cycle of cards we have gotten in a very long time. Enough that I don't know if these cards will ever just not be played, whether that's in Commander or Standard, either way. But I think these are all going to be popular cards. You're going to have to get used to dealing with them, and they're going to be one more reason that you're going to be playing stuff that gets rid of enchantments. I mean, I wish I had a better way to explain it, but yeah, these cards, we knew they were good, but they all were even better than we thought. Like, you had to work double time to get rid of them sometimes, you know, because people are playing reanimation stuff, or like, even if you were going to sweep the board, one of them sitting there with a counter that's they're going to be there at the end of the turn. Like, there's just all kinds of stuff going on with these cards, not to mention different ways you can trick them into play, whether it be Kona that we just talked about, or removing all their counters off of them with a few different cards. Like, you can do a lot of stuff with these. So yeah, I just say the Overlords as a whole. I mean, I'm probably cheating here putting all 5 in one group, but hey, they're worth it. Now, one that went under the radar a little bit was Fear of Missing Out, and we talked about this on the Magic Mike's cast, I believe, but this card, really good. It's just a 2-mana 2/3, but you get to discard a card and draw a card, which again helps you fill some Delirium stuff if you're doing that, Or if you're just doing reanimation stuff, you can put a big thing in your graveyard. But the upside of potentially getting to attack a second time with one of those bigger creatures is pretty good. And there's even some scenarios where you can attack with a couple of creatures and this, and then see what happens. You know, then you get your next attack step, and then now you can tackle those other things that were untapped, right? So that's a thing. And it is a 2/3, which means it could block a fair amount of stuff on turn 2. Just all around, this card's really good. And it got played in a bunch of different decks, right? We played it in Delirium stuff. You saw it in some regular aggro type decks. Like, stuff that wanted to have extra enchantments, it works for that too. Like, this card does so much work for such an easy cost. It's just a colorless and a red, easy to get into play. Like, no reason to not like this card. I would say even in paper, if you want to pick these up, I think I've seen them only going for like $3 right now. So lots of value to be had on this card, and I expect it's going to get played in quite a few things. Yeah, so Ballast Tradeworm. This is a card I debated what I was going to put in my 10, but I realized every deck I saw with it, mine included, like, it was always a constant threat, right? If it didn't get exiled, there was a chance you're going to be dealing with it again the next turn. If there was any way to discard it, like fear of missing out that we just talked about, like, there's a chance you're dealing with this on turn 4. It also can't be countered, which is super nice. It has haste, it has trample. It's doing everything you want a big green creature to do. And there's not really much of like an opportunity cost to put this into the deck. Like, if anything, it kind of eats up a slot that you might otherwise play Thrun right now in Standard. But you can have them for different reasons, right? Like, if you were playing a Delirium deck, you're not necessarily going to want Thrun. But maybe if you're playing more of a mid-rangey style Legends-based deck, then, like, sure, maybe you sideboard a couple of Thrun. But this card, just so good. Like, the fact that they can kill it and then they're dealing with it again the next turn is outstanding. Like, it's hard not to like this card. And the fact it can't be countered came in handy so many times. And a 5/5 with trample is just hard to deal with. And you can even go heavy on hasters if that's the things you want to do as an aggro deck. There's a ton of red cards and green cards that have haste, even more in this set, that fit right along with this card. So yeah, if you were wondering about Ballast Tradeworm, I will say this. If you're going to be playing Delirium with green, go ahead and play this card. Now, if you're not playing Delirium, I think you could probably do without it and find other options in the early going, and you don't necessarily have to spend resources to craft this card or to buy it, and you'll probably be okay. But if you're playing Delirium, this feels like a must-have card. All right, have Flood Farm Burge on screen, but I'm saying this for all the Verges. If you're playing the appropriate colors, go ahead and craft them. You're going to be using these for the life of them being in Standard. Now, the one thing I will say is people are concerned with how to play these because they think you have to do all these major changes to your mana base, but you really don't. The way I would describe it is this, and I think I talked about this on stream, but if you were going to be playing some reasonable number of basics already, or if you're going to be playing the Surveil lands from Karlov Manor, because those have each of the basic land types on them, then you can play some number of these. For example, if you were going to have, in this case with Flood Farm Verge, let's say you were going to have a deck that still has 6 plains and 4 islands, right? There's nothing wrong with replacing 4 plains with this card, because it's always going to be better than a plains, except for in the case where maybe you need to fetch to search for a basic land, but you still have those 4 other plains in the deck or whatever, right? So there's nothing wrong with replacing the plains that you actually were going to put. Now, you don't want to replace all of them, but some number of them, because if you get this in your opening hand, it's still just as good as if you had a plains. But then a reasonable amount of time, it's going to produce blue as well. So again, this is a card with such a low opportunity cost, and it's that way for all of these. Now, you may have to figure out what your mana base looks like in general to decide if you want to play these. But yeah, if you were going to play any reasonable number of basics, popping in a couple of these isn't going to hurt you. And they turned out to be really good lands. All right, so I had Unstoppable Slasher make my list, and I kind of was debating on this one, but I thought about it, and it actually was better than some of us anticipated. Now, don't forget that if they kill it while it has the 2 stun counters on it, or any number of them for that matter, it won't come back from the graveyard. It actually has any number of, any type of counters on it. So that's something to think about, but the card is a persistent, constant threat, right? A lot of times your opponent has a little 1 or 2 power Death Toucher, you just let them through. But in this case, you can't really do that with this card. So you're almost always going to give something up to this when it attacks. And your opponent could chump block forever, I guess, with tokens, but you could say that for a variety of creatures, so that doesn't really count as a down tick here. The card overall is really strong, having Death Touch even as a blocker if you need it to. And you don't even have to play it with the, any combo of things that would cause your opponent to lose the game if they lose half their life, any of that silliness. Like, it can just be a card, right? It's still an assassin, it's still a zombie. It's actually not bad. Now, if there's any real problem here, I will say that it is in the 3 mana slot, which, depending on the type of deck you're playing, even if you want to play other Death Touchers, you still have Glissa, Sunslayer, right? Which we're not going to stop playing that. And you do also have Preacher, which we're not going to stop playing that. So you kind of have to decide. So I wouldn't spend a ton of resources on this if you already have those other cards and you're not doing the halvesies on your life thing. But if you are doing the halvesies on your life thing, this card is an absolute must play. I don't think that's even a question. But if you're just doing regular mono black or Gruul mid-range, you could play a couple of these, but I don't think they're absolutely necessary, which is why it almost didn't make my list. But it did overperform. It was a constant threat. And if you just have a couple of these, sometimes that's going to be enough to help kill your opponent. So, yeah, it made my list, but I'm not saying you have to go after him. This is probably the lightest one on the list of all of them. Next up was Screaming Nemesis. This card, yeah, it's actually really good, y'all. Like, 3 mana, 3/3 with haste, with all kinds of upside. Potentially keep your opponent from not gaining life the rest of the game. You know, just being able to redirect damage. There was even times I had it in a deck where I was hoping to top deck it because the opponent is like at 3 or less life. Great, you just attack with it. If they block, they die. If it gets through, they die, right? This card's going to create a lot of tough situations for your opponents, and they're not going to like their choices a lot of times. Yeah, this card, annoying, but good, honestly, in a lot of different ways. And you can even target it yourself if you need to just make sure your opponent can't gain life. Like, you shock your creature, deal 2 to them, and now they can't gain life the rest of the way. So yeah, lots of stuff that this card's going to create, and I think it's kind of getting overlooked right now because people are trying to do ley line of resonance stuff, which, by the way, we'll be talking about that in the next video. But in general, I think this is probably the better of the new red cards, personally. I was much more afraid of this than I was of the ley line. So maybe other people had different opinions or experiences, but yeah, this card, it's a real threat and a real problem. And I wanted to take a chance to talk about a couple of rooms. And I think partly because people kept looking at rooms as like, well, what if I can't ever use the other side? Or what if I don't get to the mana? And like in this case, we're talking about Funeral Room and Awakening Hall that has a 3 mana side and an 8 mana side. But the reality is, I think you, unless you're playing a room-based deck, which is a whole different conversation, I think you have to look at the rooms as though you just want whatever side you can reasonably cast as an enchantment, right? And if it's within a reasonable cost of what you would already play in the deck, then it's probably worth playing because you get that other upside just because. And here with Funeral Room, you get to drain your opponent's life every time a creature dies, and that's kind of a thing that we've had in Standard but haven't had the cards to really commit to, right? And I think that's kind of been one of those things that these decks that like to play the like LSL core, you know, the different types of cards are just like making tokens that sacrifice at the end of turn, right? They're wanting to play all of that, but they haven't had a thing that really kind of kept driving the damage and gave them a bit of a payoff, and now we have that. So if you're into that style of deck, this card really works. I can even see some scenarios where you're playing this as part of a combo, maybe with Bartolome, if you want to do that to sacrifice a bunch of things. I could see that being a thing. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways this card could be used. So if you have a use for this type of card in a sacrifice deck, in a token-based deck, in some type of, you know, LSL core, sack and drain, whatever thing, this could be a card you're looking for. Because we haven't had one in a minute. I think Bastion of Remembrance was the last time we had a card like this on an enchantment. So yeah, this is one I would really consider. And the upside is really nice, because late game, if you top deck this with a bunch of lands out because your board's been swept multiple times, well, great. Now you just get everything into play all at once. So yeah, there's very little downside to this card as it turns out. Yeah, and here's another room I wanted to talk about because it actually performed very well. And I think we thought it was going to be okay, but I saw the Porcelain Gallery side of this, of the Dollmaker Shop, really hit more often than I thought it was going to, and that's made me reconsider this card. Like, Dollmaker Shop is just 2 mana. Every time you attack, you get a 1/1 creature. That's actually pretty good, assuming you're attacking with a non-toy card, right? So you're just getting to build your board, and there's a lot of things that care about that, right? The, what is it, the Annabella, Anampakal, you know, whatever type decks want to just keep creating tokens and tokens and tokens, right? And get more value out of that. There's a lot of cards that care about doing something when a token enters a battlefield, right? This triggers that stuff. And then the other side is just, all right, for 6 mana, all my creatures are bigger equal to the number of creatures I have. Basically, a coat of arms of sorts. So, like, this is actually super good, and very often when the other side kicks off, okay, now everything's like 4/4 or better. And that makes everything a super significant threat. Not to mention when you attack, you get another token that basically pumps your whole team. So yeah, this card was pretty wild. Like, and it turns even a single card sometimes into a consistent threat, and that can be really annoying for an opponent. So yeah, lots of upside on this card. I think you have to build with a specific thing in mind to use it. So I'm not saying every creature deck needs to go out and just have this, but it definitely has its uses if you find the right deck. And if you have a deck list that calls for 2 or 3 of these, I think you can safely craft them and not feel too bad about it. Now, I do want to say there were still a lot of other cards that were very good that didn't necessarily make my list. Enduring Vitality was really good. Chainsaw actually performed pretty well. I just don't know if they like overperformed what we expect from them. But there's still a lot of good cards in the set that I think you'll be safe crafting. So if you want to hop in my Discord, links in the description below. If you want to talk about it or ask questions, we've been having a lot of conversation already about Duskmourn stuff. Also, don't forget, check out these sweet shirts. And the next couple videos, you can find out about old stuff that got better because of Duskmourn, and other cards you probably shouldn't craft because they underperformed. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.